Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of the story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, April the 5th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that even though we are a news podcast, we do try to watch our language. Sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there'll be things that may be shown that may be too intense for younger viewers. So for viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So bear with the brother. I know we got a little technical difficulties, but we're going to roll right through it. So if you've noticed, I've kind of been gone for a while. Welcome to new addition to the family. So can't wait for that. As far as getting to teach him all the wonderful things. But yeah. A lot has happened since yours truly hasn't been able to cover the news, so we might as well go ahead and start with the first thing. The current king of the Hold My Beer competition, Florida, has done some things. Number one, the Florida Senate has actually passed their 6-week abortion ban. That's right. Dictator/Governor Ron DeSantis has decided that his 15-week abortion ban just isn't cutting it. So what are they doing? They are pushing forward with a 6-week abortion ban. It just passed the Senate as of this week, and it is headed to actually their General Assembly for the final vote. But again, I cannot stress how heavily this is about women's rights. I mean, again, I know I'm a guy, and because I'm a guy, I have no say over what a woman does with her body. That's why I'm always pro-choice. What a woman does with her body is her business and her business alone. I'll leave it at that. But it is amazing that Florida, specifically dictator Governor Ron DeSantis, is trying to do his best to control women. I mean, he's already controlling African American AP studies in history. He's already defeated his imaginary opponent CRT, which again, not being taught anywhere. And now he wants to take on abortion because he's pro-life. He's pro-life, but yet your state is like near dead last in almost everything. But it is amazing. But that's not the only thing. Oh, no. Because what DeSantis likes to do, he likes to double up. He also has quietly signed and legalized to be able to carry concealed weapons without a permit. Yep, you heard that right. If you are currently in Florida and you have a weapon and you want to conceal it, as of now, you do not need a permit. Now, I can say off the bat, this has dangerous written all over it. Yes, I get the simple fact of the matter, guys, that we are living in a society where gun laws need to change, gun reform needs to change. How we regulate guns and things that matter, all of it needs to change. This ain't it. And I don't know why. For the life of me, I don't know why. For a lot of people, and I'm not saying all gun nuts do this, but for some, it just seems to be that the idea is like, well, if we only arm more people, that's like throwing kerosene on fireworks on a hot ass day in July in a shed. The only thing that's going to happen is more damage. And now, because again, Tennessee is one of those states, specifically Davidson County here in Nashville, you can conceal carry without a permit now. And I'm sorry, that's freaking dangerous. And again, this is coming from a person that has done a crap load of training. This comes from a person who still believes in continuously training. And you want people to believe you. You want complete strangers to say, hey, I've been trained. You don't got to worry about me. I am a complete stranger to you. And you expect me to trust you because you say that you're okay to be having a gun. It doesn't work like that. But some people believe it. And again, that's scary. It is scary to believe that with gun reform, which again, we'll get into a little bit later, just because of unfortunately of a shooting that did happen in Nashville a week back. But still, the whole idea of trying to arm other people is not the answer. The answer, unfortunately, is to do what other countries have done. But again, we'll get into that later. But it's Florida. The king of the hold my beer competition still reigns supreme. Now, you guys do remember a story that we covered about a 6-year-old student that brought a gun to school and shot his teacher in the chest. You also remember that the parents were like, "Oh, we're responsible gun owners. This will never happen. This doesn't happen. Our son doesn't have issues." There was a history of issues with the boy at the school. And with all that being said, the teacher has decided to file a $40 million lawsuit against the school administrators for saying that you could have done something. And again, she wouldn't be wrong, considering the fact that A, there was a history of violence with said boy that was happening at this school. Number two, that he has been contacted multiple times. His parents, by that I mean, have been contacted by his behavior, and still nothing from the administrators all the way up to the superintendent was done until the teacher took one in the chest. I don't blame her for wanting to sue, as she should, because again, out of all that happened, nobody lost a job. Not one school, not the principal, not superintendent, nobody on the board, no jobs. But they expect this teacher to just soldier on. And that alone is crazy. And this is why I say this is the reason why I say I have a lot of respect for educators. Number one, you don't get paid enough. Number two, depending on your school system, they probably cut that budget in half every year and expect to do more with less. And again, you don't get paid enough to deal with these new crop of students out here who more than likely have zero to no respect. I can speak from that experience walking through walking through the public school system. Yeah, teachers deal with a lot, but they don't deserve to get shot in the chest. So I hope that lady gets all the money she's owed for that personally. But again, I digress. But yes, we are going to talk about school shootings because again, this one is very near to me in my hometown of Nashville. That again, we had another school shooting.
We are again. More families added to a tragic and growing list of those who have gotten that heart-crushing call, who sent or took their children to school, never imagining they would never see them again. That searing pain and sadness descending tonight on a Nashville, Tennessee community where a heavily armed shooter walked into a private Christian elementary school this morning and murdered 3 children, along with 3 adults in what police call a targeted attack. The children were just 9 years old. The shooter identified late today by Nashville police as 28-year-old Audrey Hale. Hale was fatally shot by responding officers. The scene resembling one we are all well acquainted with by now. Children lined up and hurried away from the scene. Parents waiting to be reunited with their children as scores of first responders descended on the scene. In a moment, my interview with the police chief. Kathy Park leads us off tonight from Nashville.
The start of a school day shattered by gunshots at the Covenant School in Nashville.
We're under a mass casualty alert. The school shooting, multiple victims down.
Police rushed to the small private Christian elementary school where authorities say a former student entered the building through a side door and fatally shot 3 9-year-old students and 3 adults. Authorities say the suspect, 28-year-old Audrey Hale, who identifies as transgender, was killed by police.
She was armed with at least 2 assault-type rifles and a handgun.
The first call came in at 10:13 a.m. Central Time. Police say responding officers entered the school minutes later and heard shots fired on the second floor. At 10:27 a.m., 14 minutes after the first call, police say the shooter was dead.
We've also determined there were maps drawn of the school in detail of surveillance, entry points, etc.
Amid the chaos, panicked parents anxiously waited outside for updates, while their pre-K through 6th grade students were ushered to safety.
They weren't letting the parents up there, so they were just running up the street. There were so many police cars. And then the ambulances started coming away from the school.
Inside the school, Avery Merritt's mother was teaching when the shooter opened fire.
I texted her and I said just like what was going on. She said she was hiding in the closet and that there was shooting all over.
The shooter lived in the Nashville area, according to police, and they're still investigating potential motives.
From my initial findings is that at one point she was a student at that school, but unsure what year.
The nation is no stranger to gun violence, and tonight this marks the third major school shooting of the year.
Something's got to be done. This is 3 people lost their children today. It's hard to imagine.
Folks,
the president today consoling heartbroken families while calling Congress to pass an assault weapons ban.
And we have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart.
Tonight, grief gripping another community. This time, a deadly day inside an American school.
How is this still happening? How are our children still dying, and why are we failing them?
Kathy Parker.
Fair question. How are we still failing them? Well, basically because America has a gun obsession problem. That unfortunately, because after Sandy Hook, we have really every government, including Congress, has sat there and said, you know what? We are okay with kids dying. They're saying that in so many words. We are okay with it because you know what that means? That basically means that if we are going to gun reform, there's going to be gun nuts and Second Amendment folks that are going to come out the woodworks thinking that, oh, the government's going to come for your guns. They're going to make it harder to get guns. They're going to do all this when all we're saying is simple stuff. Now, had it been me, if you let me have the ability to rewrite gun reform in America, a lot of gun nuts will hate me. Only because when I point out my list, and I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, tell me and I said, for all those that are watching this podcast or watch this on replay, please tell me if this is not reasonable. Here's Will's list for gun reform in America. Okay, you ready? Number 1, mandatory requirements. You must attend a gun safety course, a qualified gun safety course every year. You must register. You must qualify, which means you must pass the certifications. That's 1. You also must be mentally and physically evaluated by a doctor and a therapist to make sure that not only you are physically compliant, but you are mentally compliant to own firearms. Okay? Still not unreasonable, right? You also must carry insurance for firearms, which much like malpractice insurance for doctors, things of that nature, for firearm owners, they should also carry similar insurance. And you must be and it must be held throughout the year that you are certified. Still not crazy, right? At the same time, magazine capacities. Honestly, you don't need more than 15 in a mag. For a magazine, you don't need more than 15. If you do, for some odd reason, require more than 15 and need 30 or more, then here's my concession. If you want a high capacity magazine, you must pay a tax. At the same time, the weapon and you must go on a national registry list that can be viewed by the DOJ, the FBI, and the ATF on a national registry because you own these types of weapons. So therefore, you must be registered with them. Again, doesn't sound unreasonable, right? At the same time, certain weapons, such as just as assault rifle bans, which again, I would not be against putting a ban back in, because you know what happened when we didn't. Well, you know what happened when we did have an assault rifle ban that Bill Clinton signed into law, but eventually was eventually shot down. No pun intended. The mass murder rates by assault rifles went down. Anybody can argue that, and trust me, I've seen people try to argue this. Well, it was really a measure of things. No, it wasn't. If you take out the main component, for how people get these firearms, it drops. You know, okay. I mean, again, doesn't sound unreasonable, right? Here's my other part of this. Red flag laws. Extensive checks. Whether you are purchasing privately or publicly, it must be done at a federal firearms licensing station or a police station where a background check can be done. Doesn't sound unreasonable, because you know the funny thing about that is that's the problem right now. Here in Tennessee, I'll go ahead and be honest with you. In Tennessee right now, and for all those gun nuts in Tennessee, I'm still waiting for you to tell me I'm wrong. There is a gun, trade, and knife show in every county in Tennessee. As long as you have the money and the ID, you can buy any firearm you want. There's no background checks being done there. None whatsoever. As long as you have a license, as long as you have the money, you can walk out with firearms. It's a loophole because gun, trade, and knife shows are not considered commercial sales. Commercial sales require background checks. That's why whenever you go to a gun store, they run a background check. You go to a gun, trade, and knife show, you will never see it. And that's what I'm saying. From my list of things that need to be done, background checks must be done, as well as transfer liability has to be done for all private and public sales. It's that freaking simple. And again, if you don't qualify for this, again, I can't tell you. And again, if you're listening to this, these are the things I went down. It's a simple list that has to be done every year. I guarantee someone's going to sit there and say, well, why do we got to qualify every year? In the same sense that you have to vote the same sense you have to register to vote. In the same sense that you have to basically re-sign up for insurance. In the same sense that you do so many things you can do, but and I've seen people complain. I've seen people complain about to this day. Also, ghost guns. I have seen people get mad when I say ghost guns should be banned. And I've sat there and said the thing about ghost guns. You heard me say this in this podcast before. Ghost guns do not have serial numbers. They are basically kits that anybody can buy because there's not a legal age on them. There's no serial numbers on them, so they can't be tracked. Hence why they're popular. But again, hey, Kels, you were absolutely right. There are no gun. Exactly. Thank you. There are no background checks these gun and knife shows. They easily get these. But again, this is why I sit there and say, if you let me do gun reform the way I want to, I guarantee there'll be at least half a dozen people will be mad at me because they don't want regulations. You know why? Because they'll say it all the time. This is a given argument that, oh, well, the criminals don't follow laws. Well, no shit, genius. We're not talking about criminals. Because if you notice the last couple of school shootings, the last couple of mass shootings, it wasn't criminals. It was really disturbed individuals who should not have access to firearms and were able to get them and actually cause this. These weren't criminals. Again, that's the gun nut straw man argument when it comes to this mess. That's what they do. They argue this down because they have no legal leg to stand on. Because as much as people want to arm themselves, the only way that we are going to actually get these mass shootings things to go down is to actually introduce gun regulation to the point where other countries are doing it. Because Japan has some of the strictest gun laws and regulations out of any country. Australia, same. UK, same. New Zealand, they just banned assault rifles 3 years. New Zealand had one mass shooting. One. They had one mass shooting. The prime minister banned assault-style rifles. They haven't had any mass shooting since. Again, tell me how regulations don't work. But I digress, though, because, again, this did happen in Nashville. And the next part I'm about to show you is really a bunch of students who have got so fed up that they are literally and figuratively taking it to the Capitol. And that's a beautiful thing, that these are kids that have walked out of their classrooms and protested and saying, we're tired of getting shot at. I don't blame them. Imagine the simple fact of the matter is just that as a student, it's already hard enough. Like I said, teachers don't get paid enough. They're already against the wall. You have kids who are coming off remote learning. They're still trying to make it through a bastardized education system. And you got to worry about some person or guy or girl with a gun coming to shoot you because of their issues. I don't blame the kids. And in Kells, again, you're right. The UK, China, New Zealand all have strict gun regulations. There have been no other school shootings in other countries. And you're right. The children shall lead. I agree with that on all terms. But it is amazing that in the Tennessee legislature right now, that first off, and forget my language, piece of shit Bill Lee hasn't said anything except thoughts and prayers. You had one Republican say, well, there's nothing we can do about gun school deaths. Well, not everybody in the Tennessee state legislature feels the same. You had 3 Democrats that stood with the protesters, and you would think for an inept state legislature that they would do something about it. Well, the Republicans did. They're trying to oust the 3 Democrats that stood with the protesters. I wish I could make this up.
3 House Democrats, Justin Jones, Gloria Johnson, and Justin Pearson, are facing expulsion. House Republicans filed 3 resolutions, one to expel each representative. It says they did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House last week when they protested inside of the chambers after the deadly school shooting in Nashville. However, these Democrats said they recognized what they did was wrong, but it was for the people.
We committed no crime. We walked to the well to speak to the people who were begging us to protect them.
Article 2, Section 27 of the state constitution says that lawmakers have a right to protest against and dissent from any legislation that is injurious to the people and have their protests marked in the Journal of the House. That's what we were doing.
And exercising our First Amendment right as legislators and the people exercising their First Amendment rights in this state house is what's being sought to be expelled. This is wrong. This is not a democracy. This is what a dictatorship and oligarchy, this is what that form of government, that's what we expect, but not here in the state of Tennessee, not in the United States of America.
Loud chants and boos could be heard from the House chambers Monday night when the first resolution was read.
Go.
State troopers forced people out of the gallery.
The people united will never be divided.
Outside of the chambers, all 3 House Democrats held hands high, chanting with the people.
So to have one of my colleagues, Justin Lafferty, push me and take my phone when I was trying to record the people being dragged out the balcony by troopers who were just simply saying that what is happening is dangerous, what is happening is scary, that they took this vote to expedite expelling us for nonviolent, elevation of our constituents' demands.
The House deferred the expulsion vote until Thursday. These 3 say they're planning to fight this all the way.
They are going with the NRA and the Tennessee Firearms Association instead of listening to the people of Tennessee. They're allowing children to die while doing nothing.
And she's right. Now, the groups that she just mentioned, the Tennessee Firearms Association, think of them like basically NRA light, which basically they lobby a lot of the Republicans here in Congress, especially here in Tennessee. They also lobby the simple fact of the matter of how guns are regulated. Because, again, there are red flags laws out there. Red flag laws. For all those that don't know, red flag laws, where you pop up on domestic violence, whether you've been arrested for any crime that's included loss of life, damage to property, you're basically put on a list where you can never buy a handgun. The problem is that actual red flag law isn't as heavily enforced as you think it is, especially here in Tennessee. It's not. So that's the reason why she brings that up. But you notice 3 Democrats. Again, I know it's weird. A Democrat in Tennessee, it's a unicorn. I get it. But you had 3 people who wanted to stand with the kids and say, we agree with you. We don't want any of the kids to get shot anymore. And you have an entire council of grumpy old white men who say, you know what? No, you 3 are being disruptive. we're going to expose you. We're going to go ahead and bring up a measure to have you expelled from the chambers. And a lot of people are sitting there saying, can they do that? Unfortunately, yes, because of how Tennessee's constitution and state laws are written. That's exactly how they can do it. And this is why I keep saying all the time, know your state's, specifically your state and county's laws. Because if you really do a deep dive, like I've done in Davidson County where I live at, you will be amazed and shocked about the laws that are put in place that these lawmakers are empowered to do. It is completely crazy and nuts. But we'll follow up with that on Thursday, just because that's when the vote happens. And again, just because 3 people they apologize, I wish they didn't. What are you apologizing for? You don't want kids to be shot. You have voiced your opinion more than all those grumpy old white men that are still sitting in that council, who are basically getting ushered in and protected by state highway police because you're afraid of kids. Because trust and believe, those kids will come out until they're heard. And what did you say, Kels? Oh, Speaker of the House had the audacity to compare that peaceful protest to the January 6th raid. Yeah, they did. And it's amazing to me that that same Speaker of the House and his deputy has an issue, but that's a whole nother story. But yes, this is what happens when you bring up gun reform, and especially when it involves loss of life. It is amazing to me that people will hold on. Let me scratch that. Guns have more protection in the South than kids. Let that sink in for a minute. Guns, inanimate objects that can cause great destruction, have more protection than the next generation. Again, how does that not dawn on people? That's all I can sit there and say about that. But again, we'll follow that story as it comes along. But before we get to the bingo card, as I like to call it, because again, I've kind of been off for a while, so I've missed a lot. Trump is dealing with a lot, especially with this one before we get into the major one. But he's dealing with this one, that the special counsel that's handling the issue of how he had classified records at Mar-a-Lago is wrapping up. That's very scary for Trump. Because, again, this is a slam dunk. Trump had documents because he thought he had clearance, which he didn't, because he thought he had the ability to give it to himself, which he didn't, and refused to give it back, which he eventually did. And it's now because of all his legal remiferoo, had to get special counsel involved. So now the special counsel, as he's wrapping up, is about to give his ruling. 9 times out of 10, it's going to find Trump guilty, and it's not going to be, very light on him. But again, this is the same guy who there's no way I can say this about the former failure in chief. He romanticizes the idea of notoriety. He does. He loves it. He loves he loves being infamous. I mean, granted, that's him. He's been a con man all his life. But he is not only facing multiple charges from multiple lawsuits. He finally got his day in court. And again, I did not have this on my bingo card of 2023.
A spectacle never seen before in America, with potentially unprecedented political ramifications as well. Donald Trump, the former president and current presidential candidate, walking into a New York courtroom after being fingerprinted and being charged with 34 felonies. The charges stemming from a series of alleged hush money payoffs to an adult film star in hopes of avoiding scandals as he ran for president. He is the first former American president to face criminal charges. And today, before a judge in Manhattan criminal court, he pleaded not guilty. Afterward, his lawyers blasting the indictment. And though he has been defiant, one source described Mr. Trump today as very somber. It was the start of what will be a drawn-out process for the former president, and it's where we begin tonight with NBC's Garrett Hake. Garrett, good evening.
Good evening, Lester. This history-making hearing lasted less than an hour. I was in the courtroom for what Mr. Trump himself described as a surreal experience. A former commander-in-chief, now a criminal defendant.
Tonight, former President Trump back in Florida, slamming the criminal charges he's now facing from Manhattan prosecutors.
The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
Earlier, former President Trump with a clenched fist and a wave as he left his luxury Trump Tower apartment for a Spartan Manhattan courthouse. His motorcade tracked from the air on live television as Mr. Trump posted, "They are going to arrest me. Can't believe this is happening in America." The surreal sight as he walked inside, flanked by Secret Service. Mr. Trump was processed behind closed doors with his fingerprints taken, but no mugshot.
President Trump, will you come speak to us?
Then silently walking in to face a judge. No TV cameras allowed in the courtroom. Only these photos taken before the hearing, showing Mr. Trump seated with his attorneys. In the hearing, our first look at the charges, 34 felony counts for falsifying business records.
The defendant repeatedly made false statements on New York business records.
The case brought by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg centers around the accounting of hush money payments that Trump fixer turned critic Michael Cohen says he made to Stormy Daniels in 2016 on behalf of Mr. Trump to conceal an extramarital encounter, which the former president denies. The indictment also referencing what appear to be hush money payments to Karen McDougal, who alleged an affair with Mr. Trump, and a $30,000 payment to a former Trump Tower doorman, who prosecutors allege claimed to have a story about a child Trump had out of wedlock. Both accusations that Mr. Trump has also previously denied. Falsifying business records is normally a misdemeanor, but in an untested legal gamble, Bragg is charging Mr. Trump with the lowest level felonies.
The conduct I just described and that which was charged by the grand jury is felony criminal conduct in New York State.
Mr. Trump himself telling the judge his not guilty plea.
If this man's name was not Donald J. Trump, there is no scenario we'd all be here today. Please understand that based on these charges.
Mr. Trump's attorneys blasting the Democratic DA's case as a partisan vendetta. Tonight, Bragg defending the charges after federal prosecutors and Bragg's predecessor both declined to pursue any charges against Mr. Trump in this case.
We have had available to the office additional evidence that was not in the office's possession prior to my time here. The bedrock, in fact, the basis for business integrity and a well-functioning business marketplace is true and accurate record keeping.
America first!
Meanwhile, demonstrators clashing outside the courthouse. A pro-Trump protest organized by Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, confronted by a group of counter-protesters, including Democratic New York Congressman Jamal Bowman.
Go back to your district!
We ducked into a car to hear her response.
They're not prosecuting President Trump, they're persecuting him. And it's all because he's the leading Republican candidate for the presidential election for 2024.
And Garrett, the judge also had some stern words about some of the rhetoric that's been used surrounding this case.
That's right, Lester. He warned attorneys on both sides to make sure both Mr. Trump or anyone else associated with this case refrain from using language that might incite violence or undermine the rule of law. It comes after Mr. Trump has repeatedly and personally attacked the district attorney Bragg on social media. Lester?
All right, Garrett Haig, thank you.
Okay, so that right there, I did not have this on my bingo card of 2023 that Trump would literally be indicted. I mean, forget the fact that he's falsified business records. Forget the fact of his multiple failed business endeavors. Forget the fact he has claimed bankruptcy several times under different businesses. But forget also the fact that he's still under 6 different lawsuits from 6 different things. But the one thing that may actually take him down is his run through with a former porn star. As Don King once said, only in America could you go down for that. But yes, Trump loves the infamy on that. He loves the fact that he thinks he's the victim. He loves the fact that he thinks that this is all an attack on him. But you know what also is nuts? What also is nuts, and I know what I'm about to do. We are going to go to the other side. Fox News. I know Fox News is not a real news station. It is literally entertainment propaganda. But again, there are folks out there, actually there's a lot of folks out there that watch that show, that watch that train wreck of a network. And why? Because they tell a different story on the other side about what's happening to Trump. Observe.
Meantime, the Trump presidential campaign is getting a record-setting boost in his bid to take back the White House, raising over $8 million in the 4 days since the indictment.
Outkick host Tommy Lahren joins us now. Tommy, do you share Joe Biden's faith in the legal system to treat Donald Trump fairly?
Well, unfortunately, this legal system has a history of treating Donald Trump unfairly, but I think Joe should tread very lightly and be very careful with the justice system in general, given the fact that Hunter Biden, his son, and of course he himself, the big guy, they have numerous investigations by House Republicans going on into their business dealings. So I hope that he is singing the same tune when House Republicans conclude with their investigations. But really what this is such pompous narcissism from the White House yet again. And it's really quite pathetic when you think about it, that the Democrat machine has to come in and pinch hit for Joe Biden yet again because they know that he cannot win an election alone in 2024. So they have to go after his leading opponent yet again with some sham charges, this BS indictment. Of course, Joe Biden is happy about it. He has to do less work in 2024, but he is grossly underestimating Donald Trump and, most importantly, Trump supporters, as we are seeing from these fundraising totals already, guys.
So, Tommy, how do you think this?
So, yeah, let me stop right there. So, because again, it's Tommy Lahren. Just understand the Fox News' blueprint is blonde, airheaded, and willing to show cleavage. Let's just be honest about that. But what's scary, not because of the fact that they think this is Democrats and Biden in the White House, because that's what Fox News does. They have to spin the narrative. But the number that you should be concerned about is the number for fundraising for Trump, $8 million for his campaign. And I thought to myself, how in the world does this man still have money when he basically is owing everybody? And I see it already. It's because folks still believe in this man. Folks still believe this man is being prosecuted falsely. Because in his eyes, they tried to impeach me once, they tried to impeach me twice, they tried to bring up Ukraine, they tried to bring up, which I thought was funny, you bring up Ukraine, but Ukraine didn't happen during your administration. I just find it funny. Well, what about Russia? Oh, you love Putin. And for a while on Fox News loved Putin. See how I mean from one side of it all, that you can't trust, again, a entertainment news station calling themselves the news when really it's state-run propaganda. Now, again, that was Tommy Lahren. Let's go to the three-headed hydra, shall we? Let's first start off with douchebag Tucker Carlson and how he feels about Trump being indicted.
Court today. The former president is back in Florida at this hour and scheduled to speak in just a moment from Mar-a-Lago. This feels significant, so we're going to take his remarks live as soon as they begin. But before we get there, it's worth understanding what it is we've just seen. Often the clearest perspectives on our country come from outside its borders. With distance comes clarity. So with that in mind, here is Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele on Twitter today. Quote, "Think what you want about former President Trump and the reasons he's being indicted," Bukele wrote. "But just imagine if this happened in any other country where a government arrested the main opposition candidate. The United States' ability to use, quote, democracy as foreign policy is gone." Thousands of miles from New York City, in the heart of Central America, it is very obvious what just happened at that Manhattan courthouse. It's obvious to many Democrats, too. Trump was criminally charged because he is planning to challenge Joe Biden in the upcoming presidential election. It's really that simple. If Donald Trump had retired in 2020, would he have been arraigned today? Of course not. Top Democrats know that. Some effectively admit it. The liberal blog Politico this morning ran a piece describing what it called President Joe Biden's most senior advisors, predicting that Trump will be the Republican nominee, and because he has now been charged with crimes, he will lose the general election. Thanks to this criminal case, the Biden White House believes that swing voters, the critical voters in a presidential election, are, quote, now permanently out of Trump's reach. And just to make certain that swing voters...
So again, I want to stop it there, because if you've noticed something, we just heard from airhead Tommy Lauren, douchebag Tucker Carlson. They're not talking about the fact of the charges that Trump is facing. They're not talking about the hush money payments that were done by Michael Cohen, his former personal fixer / lawyer to Stormy Daniels. They're not talking about that case at all. You know what they're talking about? The election. Now, you've heard two people talk about elections. You've heard two people say, well, this case against him is really just BS. It's this, it's that. But they're not talking about the case. They're talking about the election. They're talking about the next upcoming presidential election. Oh, well, Trump's going to be the Republican candidate. Not when the GOP is already trying to pull away from him. But again, I digress. Let's go with the second head of the Hydra machine known as Fox News. Take it away, Laura.
Well, I'm a former white-collar criminal defense lawyer. You might not have known that about me. And I read the entire 16-page indictment handed down by left-wing New York DA Alvin Bragg. And here's my reaction. Just another political hit job.
Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about.
Well, a blatantly false statement. Here's the only thing non-lawyers need to know about this case. If after the 2020 election, Donald Trump had announced that he was retiring from politics, Alvin Bragg would not have indicted him. Or let's say if after 2020, Trump had gradually evolved in his views and maybe became more like Romney or one of the Bushes. In that case, Alvin Bragg would not have indicted him. The real reason that Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted today comes down to one simple fact. He has the wrong political views. Now, to the entire class of politicians and media figures who cheered the proceedings today, Donald Trump represents an existential threat. A threat to the regime that's run our country into the ground for decades, a threat to the credibility of the media that he calls out relentlessly. But most significant of all, another Trump term is a threat to the Biden family and their nonstop grift machine. Alvin Bragg is more like Alvin Bag, because he's nothing but the bag man for the White House, hoping his reward comes when he runs for, let's say, governor as the Trump slayer. Yet right now, he's just the middleman for the DNC and an illicit scheme to interfere in the 2024 election cycle. In his astonishingly thin indictment, Bragg alleges that it was Trump who may have, now I say may have, attempted to interfere in the 2020 election or may have violated state election laws by allegedly ordering that former mistresses be paid off, then concealing the reimbursement of those payouts. Now, in a few moments, we're going to be talking with the former chair of the...
Now, do you see it? We're up to 3. And this is why I say Fox News cannot be taken seriously. They've all said the same thing. Very little about the case, very little about the hush payments. But what are they attacking? They're attacking Democrats saying, oh, Biden can't win against Trump. Well, he did. Well, he can't do it again. Well, the GOP is not going to push him again. But, whatever makes you feel better. Oh, but the charges are false. He may have known about these things. Yes. And that's why there's enough evidence that a judge says that he can be indicted and he can go to trial. For a person like Laura Ingraham, who's supposedly a lawyer, you would kind of point that out. Instead of going after the attorney, going after the Manhattan DA who's filing the charges. But again, this is nothing new. This is what Fox does. What Fox News does is that they try not. It's like, you know what it is. It's like taking your very older conservative relative in your family and say, okay, we're gonna go over here. Look at the wall and pretend this white wall is blue. And we're going to keep bashing you in the head until you see blue. And then you're going to agree with us. That's Fox News. And again, they're all, and if you've noticed, I just showed you now going on 3 people who all are repeating the same thing. They're not talking about the case. they are talking about the presidential election and the fact that Trump scares people. Trump may do a lot of things, but scaring and intimidating people is not one of them. But again, we're not through with the three-headed Hydra. There's still one last guy who reminds me, because I think Bill O'Reilly still talks to him as the ghost of Christmas past, Sean Hannity. I wonder what he had to say about the indictment.
Very dark, a very corrosive chapter in American history, with a sloppy DA clearly buckling to radical left-wing political pressure, is now about to cause serious harm to our great republic. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., former President Donald Trump is expected to arrive at New York City's criminal court to be arraigned on a series of bizarre, far-fetched charges surrounding what was a legal non-disclosure agreement signed more than 6 years ago. But according to the media mob, well, we're watching the crime of the century. Today, it was O.J. Simpson and the white Ford Bronco all over again. It was John Gotti finally being brought to justice. No man is above the law. They cheerfully exclaim in unison. Now, of course, in less than 24 hours, Donald Trump will be the first former president in history to be charged with a crime. But for what? Allegations of a mislabeled document between two private citizens, $130,000 non-disclosure agreement, phony accusations of what, a victimless infraction, a case that relies almost in total of the testimony from a convicted, admitted liar, a felon by the name of Michael Cohen, a case that has never been tried before using a new legal theory that was never applied to anyone else, and a case that looks to be well past the statute of limitations. Now, the charges are so pathetically weak that the DOJ, the FEC, Bob Mueller, the prior Manhattan District Attorney, all declined to bring a case. And former congressman, by the way, who voted to impeach Donald Trump, this is what he tweeted: "We're going to indict a former president for essentially misdemeanor falsification of business records. We are crossing the Rubicon for that." That seems like effing weak sauce. Anyway, make no mistake, what we are witnessing now, this is nothing but a blatant act of political persecution unfolding right before your eyes from a repulsive left-wing hack who had promised to take down Donald Trump on the campaign trail. Now, as the former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Andy McCarthy, pointed out, Bragg would have not brought these charges against any defendant not named Donald Trump. After all, Bragg barely brings charges against actual criminals, violent offenders, rapists, robbers. More than half get off without any felony conviction. They get a free pass, an opportunity to terrorize more innocent New Yorkers. Crime keeps rising, out of control. In recent days, there was a gas station stabbing in Manhattan. A journalist jumped on the subway, a woman stabbed on the sidewalk, and an off-duty police officer beaten by a biker. These are all random, high-profile attacks, by the way, which happen every day, likely carried out by career criminals who will probably never see the inside of a prison, thanks to the policies of Alvin Bragg, who is too busy now going after Donald Trump. But again, Bragg's watch and under his watch, and this witch hunt against Trump is not about keeping people in New York safe or secure.
Well, I told you. Again, now I'll give Handy a little bit of credit. He doesn't mention the election yet. Granted, I cut him off in the middle of that because you can only deal with so much Fox News bullshit after a while. But I love the fact that they talk very little about the case. Oh, about a non-disclosure agreement, about an ordinate sum of money between two consenting adults. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but did Sean Hannity just confirm that? Well, Fox News is just saying, well, Trump basically decided to trick a little bit. He tricked a little bit. He paid $130,000 to trick. That's what Sean Hannity just said, because he was too busy dissecting the DA who's bringing up the case. Because for all those that don't know, if you've ever been in a courtroom, what they usually do on the defense side, if you are suing someone, rule number one is character assassination. They went after the former New York DA who brought Trump charges on his issues with the Trump organization, in which his COO went to jail on. They went after her. Anybody that ever went against Trump, including former Republicans who are no longer part of the party, all paid the price because guess what? At the time, you had to go with the pack or you against it. So what did Hannity do? He basically sat there and said, well, Alvin Bragg has an agenda. He doesn't mention Democrats. I'll give him that because Fox News has to be a little bit different. Keep in mind, Fox News is already facing a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit for basically saying that the company Dominion and their voting systems were fraudulent. And every one of their hosts, including all the douchebags I just showed, are now named in that lawsuit. So again, the reason, and thank you guys for sticking with me this far, because I know I just showed Fox News. I know we all got through it. I'm proud of you. But the reason why I showed that is because that's what the other side is seeing. Instead of seeing Trump actually get done, you know what they're saying? Oh, this is bias. This is a witch hunt. Justice is justice. There's no justice in law. There's no justice in court. And anybody who's melanated or a person of color is looking at these potato salad warriors and going, really? Y'all are the ones that are claiming that there's no injustice? There's no law and order? There's no balance of the scales in court? You're saying that? And the hypocrisy knows no bounds. But again, yes, Trump will be facing 34 counts of basically tricking to be with a porn star and lied about it. Imagine if that is the thing that takes him down. Not the fact of he screwed everybody over that's ever worked for him and done business with him. Not for the fact he's been compromised and purchased for by foreign governments. Not the fact that he more than likely has a treasure trove of falsified tax reports that the IRS would love to dig into. But the one thing that's going to take him down was a porn star that got paid to go down on him. Ain't that irony? But I digress. Moving right along, guys. This next story bothers me because I always say it all the time, voting matters. It really and truly does. But you get individuals like what this person did that make a lot of people wonder why they vote in the first place. Because this Democrat who was elected has just now decided to change their colors and go Republican in the middle of their congressional season. I wish I could make this up.
I'm Trisha Cotham. I am a single mom of two amazing sons, a teacher, a small business owner, a woman with strong faith, a national championship basketball coach, and a public servant. Today, I add Republican to that list. I have decided to change my party affiliation, joining the Republican Party, and have been welcomed with open arms by my colleagues. And I'm glad to call you all my colleagues. As long as I have been a Democrat, the Democrats have tried to be a big tent. But this now where we are, modern day Democratic Party has become unrecognizable to me and to so many others throughout this state and this country. I'm not a politician. I'm no longer a Democrat, but I remain a public servant. That is what I am called to do. The party that best represents me and my principles and what's best for North Carolina is the Republican Party. It's an honor to be here today. I thank you all so very much. Glad to be on the team.
Now, what's annoying about that, and I say annoying, is because you had constituents vote for you. You ran Democrat for your office, and that was Representative Trisha Cotham, by the way. So, representative ran for representative position in the state of North Carolina. People voted for you, voted Democrat. You ran as Democrat. You got elected, and then you decided, as of today, I'm going to switch teams. And the problem with this is there's nothing in the bylaws that says if a representative or a senator switches their party alignment, that immediately there should be a special election. There should be. If you literally switch, if you go from Democrat to Republican or Republican to Democrat, at this point, every vote that got you to your elected office should now be tossed back. And there should now be a state election. And yes, it should be, because you change where you're at. But the fact that there is no law in that placement for there, that not only can that individual, number one, remain a representative from North Carolina, but now she's immediately added to the Republican side. Where's the due process? Because again, I am the same guy that has heard it many a times. Oh, I don't want to vote, Will, because my vote doesn't matter. I don't want to vote because they're going to put in who they want to put in. I have faced those arguments for as long as I can remember. But I can also sit there and say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's stuff like that that validates what they're saying. Is that going to keep you from voting? Absolutely not. Because again, if you're not active, you're not going to change anything. Complaining does nothing. But there should be something in place within the states that if a representative or a senator happens to change their party alignment, that there needs to be a special election. Because for the people, we only want who we put in there from Jump Street, not somebody who decided it was a good idea to go Democrat and then change your stripes because you believe in what the Republican Party believes. And if you hadn't heard her speech in that mid-42, she hit all the right notes. Family, faith, and I'm surprised she didn't say guns. So she stuck with sports. Because that's usually the conservative trifecta. Gods, guns, and family. As long as you hit all three, as long as you hit two out of those three, you've apparently said your Hail Marys and you've been accepted into the blood of Republicans. But I'm not surprised by that. I really am not. But at the same time, this goes to show you that the simple fact of the matter is laws need to change to hold politicians accountable. That's all I'm saying. But a couple more stories, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment. We might as well talk about this because usually I don't try to cover sports on a news segment, but this is actually bigger than sports. You've probably seen this picture so many times, it ain't even funny. This is basically the women's NCAA championship game between Iowa and LSU. Of course, Caitlin Clark and two names you've heard a lot, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Now, unless you've been in Iraq, Caitlin Clark was the great white hope. Why? Because she was a high scorer. She was white. She could play ball. She is white. She's very competitive. She's also white. You also see the point I'm getting here. But she did a gesture that for those of the wrestling community, if you will, we're familiar with this. And of course, she did that to an opposing team. Why is that relevant? It's relevant because, again, we saw Angel Reese do this to her. Now, again, I'm not mad about that because I am very competitive. I know in the world of sports, trash talking comes with territory. But there's one rule of trash talking, one unspoken rule. Whatever you throw out, you better be ready to take it as it comes back. Don't dish out something you can't take. Don't take what you can't dish out, as it's always been said. A lot of people are saying, well, Caitlin Clark, well, she's very compassionate. She's got passion. She's competitive. Angel Reese. Oh, well, she's ghetto. She has no class. And I'm like, well, wait a second. What? I don't see the difference. Because, again, Caitlin Clark talked mess. At the same time, if you talk mess, you better back it up. And what did Reese and LSU do? Reese and LSU backed it up and basically told Caitlin Clark, yeah, you're not going to make it. you're not going to make it. You didn't win because, again, LSU basically beat Iowa 101-85. Now, Dr. Jill Biden, the first lady of the White House, usually when you win major sports events, the winners get invited to the White House for a visit, photo op, all that stuff, right? Dr. Jill Biden was like, let's have both teams. Excuse me? Let's invite LSU and also Iowa for the amazing game they've played. Now, if you're like me and you're thinking about this, like, wait a second, don't the winners only get invited to the White House? When do we start inviting the losers? And again, this kind of goes into this mentality of, and again, if you've heard Moneybagg Yo's song, it's cool when they do it. It's a problem when I do it. And, you know, the last part, it amazes me that a lot of people are going, wait a minute. Now, Dr. Jill Biden, we was rolling with you for a second, but you might have made a mistake on this. Because for a lot of people, especially people of color, had Iowa won over LSU, would she have said the same thing? Hell no. Because I said this before on another friend's podcast, I'm going to say it again. It just seems like the White House needs a resupply of their their raisin potato salad. Because there seems to be this complex of if a white person does something in sports, it's gutsy, it's heroic, it's gritty. But if a black person does it, it's seen as disrespectful, uneducated, undisciplined. And I don't understand why. Because to me, it's the same thing. Now, do I think Dr. Jill Biden was wrong for inviting both teams? Absolutely. I really do think that she was wrong. I think this was a grave misstep because why are we inviting the winners and the losers? I know in today's society, for me, I don't believe in participation trophies. If you earn it, you get it. And if you don't get it, well, work harder for your next shot at it. But I don't believe in participation trophies. I don't believe in getting a trophy for just showing up. Because to me, lack of effort equals to a lack of will, which means to a lack of a better adult. That's just me. But I think she really messed up here. Because again, with this already charged environment that we're in, it is fairly obvious that when it's white, it's right. And when it's not white, they have an issue with it. Why? Because there's a lot of folks out there that have this white savior complex. And again, you know who you are. But in the world of trash talking, it's just simply a rule. It's just simply, well, it's an unwritten rule and it's a known rule. Don't start what you can't finish and don't brag what you can't back up. You can't see me. That's some shit. Anyway, last story, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment. You guys probably covered this story about a few months back about a slaughterhouse that was literally having children, keep in mind, underage children working illegally in these slaughterhouses, and that they were found out. Now, of course, this eventually led to a Department of Labor investigation, which found that more than 100 children were working in these slaughterhouses in 13 locations across 8 states. Now, you're probably wondering, oh, does that mean criminal charges are coming? Does that mean that the company will be held liable? Will there be things coming? You'd like to think so. What actually wound up happening was that the CEO, Dan Taft, is retiring. At the same time, the company the company itself is owned by an equity firm that's launching a new $10 million fund to enhance the well-being of children in the communities that is a known area. But the company is still denying that they hired children in the first place. But there's the one thing out of this, even though this investigation is still going, here's the one thing I don't hear out of this. No criminal charges being filed. The company is not facing severe penalizations as of yet, and nobody's going to jail. And I'm just like, again, this is an ongoing investigation so far, but if you're the CEO of a company who was just found out to have child labor, underage children working in slaughterhouses, sometimes during midnight shifts, you've been caught, and yet no one in that company is facing criminal charges. At least not yet. But the CEO was able to retire. Make that makes sense. Because again, with child labor laws going on in the world today, how in the world that a slaughterhouse could have more than 100 children working at 13 different locations in 8 states and not one person be brought to justice, not one person answer for it. Not the company is facing major fines for what they do. But again, it's an ongoing investigation. We'll just see what happens. But again, I'm just surprised that as of yet, we see no action. But that's really going to do it for the stories, guys. Let's go and get to our feel-good segment, because you don't have the Frack guy here. We do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes they use faith in humanity, but hey, it's Wednesday. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday. Some of y'all will not be working for Good Friday, as Easter is just around the corner. But we want to leave you guys out some feel-good stories, give you those good vibrations, bring a little bit of positivity back in the world. And this woman, this young girl that I'm about to show, not only wants to make sure that history is told, but wants to make sure because representation matters.
9-year-old Alex Williams got an assignment for Black History Month. Describe a hero. She chose Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license in the United States.
She flew in the sky and she got to do everything that she wanted, because even though everybody was like, no, you can't do that. You're a girl and you're Black. You can't do that.
But her 3rd grade teacher told her Coleman, nicknamed Brave Bessie, was not a hero.
I was mad because I took all that work, and my mom, she already got the board.
Alex's mother, who works at the FAA, pushed back.
That's when I switched into mommy bear mode and said, wait a minute. And so I grabbed my phone and I emailed her, and she in turn did say to me, no, she can't do her. She's not a hero. And I was like, I beg to differ.
But she said the teacher suggested more well-known figures like Harriet Tubman or Maya Angelou. And when it came time to present, Alex was not called on.
She cried. She was very upset.
Her mom decided to take her to FAA headquarters, where she detailed Coleman's life to agency officials, including the deputy administrator.
Bessie Coleman was known as Queen Bess, Brave Bess. Bessie Coleman would walk on the wings of airplanes and parachute out.
Alex was also presented with a copy of a newly minted coin commemorating Coleman, along with a Coleman Barbie doll.
What's the lesson for you, Alex?
Not to take no for an answer, because there's a big, gigantic yes at the end of the road.
Yamiche Alcindor.
And she is exactly 100% right. But yeah, I like the fact, because again, it is amazing because we guys talk about history, representation, the fact that there are so many factors out there that are trying to whitewash Black history, and the fact that she did choose a hero. And don't get that twisted. Bessie Coleman is definitely a hero. So whoever that educator is out there, sit on the cactus. But that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. So thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugs before we get out of here, guys. First and foremost, shout out to my buddy Vaughn at Big BZA on all social media. You can definitely search him at 3MG Beat Trap on his YouTube music channel, as he has plenty of free content there. And also, and he also does beats as well. So if there are beats you're interested in, definitely check him out. Search Big BZA on all social media. As for yours truly, guys, I can be found BlackFox447 on all socials. I usually do reviews on everything that I read, that I watch, that I play. Even do gym stuff sometimes. I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, the link at the bottom, we made that just a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook group for all my podcasts. How the Frack got here, get bit, and of course, off of this podcast. Definitely like, share, subscribe, and let me know about the show. Let me know about the subjects that we covered and your opinions on them. I want to keep the conversation going. But understand, it's a conversation. We're not trying to beat people's heads over with opinions. We can actually have discussions, and guess what? We can also agree to disagree. It's just that simple. But also at the same time, guys, my wish for this year, again, we are all running different races. We're all on different paths. We will all get to our goals in due time. But if someone is able to get to their goal before you, congratulate them, give them the props, their roses, because the grind is real. The grind is real. Some people make it overnight. Some people take years. But the grind is real, and everybody should be appreciated for their efforts. It's always, like I said, congratulate. It's easier to congratulate. It takes a lot of energy to be salty. And I don't know about you, I like my salt on burgers and steak, not on somebody else's name, because you just only season them up. So again, It's about encouragement. It's about pushing people forward. It's about coming together. It's about unity. That's what I'm hoping for, especially with my people of color and also my seasoned male folks out there. You know who you are. But with also that being said, guys, even though the pandemic is starting to wind down, please still be careful. COVID, you can still get COVID. You can still get its many variants out there. Even with springtime coming around, there's still pollen season for all those that have allergies. Please be careful. If you are traveling, please wear a mask. Please avoid areas that may be high traffic areas if need be. If you are feeling the least bit sick, please stay home. Do all these things to help out our hospital personnel, including our doctors and nurses and all of them there, because number one, they're not getting paid enough for what they do, but they need to have a break because right now our hospital system is at the breaking point. Help them to help you to help them. That's all I'm saying. But the last thing I'll say about how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information and allowing you to make up your own mind. But we are providing a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions down that we should have done back then. Like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black 4-star military general, electing our first black soldier to receive the most recent Medal of Honor for his time in Vietnam. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up by your paycheck? Why are we still electing the same politicians, still the same old guy in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this. Peace.